Hi, I'm Don Dubé, retiree from Algonquin College, and pleased to be part of this 50th anniversary kickoff celebration. Please join us as we reminisce, tell stories from the past, and most of all, share with you our deep sense of pride for this wonderful, outstanding post-secondary institution, Algonquin College, Pembroke campus. Sheila, some of the stories about those early years in the nursing program just make me chuckle.
Well, when Isabel Hickson hired me, she handed me a 3-inch blue binder and said, here's the program, and do what you will. So that's where I started, and we ended up with, the personal support worker program. But we started out with some pretty strange places where we taught, in church basements, in the Red Cross Hall in Renfrew. Our mannequins were almost wooden mannequins and paper mache, and their joints were hooks that you had to hook together to get them to work. And when I retired, we had mannequins that would talk to you and breathe and throw up and all those things. So it came a long way in the 25 plus years I was there.
Bill, you had decades of professorial work at the college. A lot of changes in the program. Let's start with technology.
Well, technology was something. When I started, I came out of teaching high school, and we were doing mainly tubes, starting into transistors, so it was a matter of then switching into integrated circuits. And then I worked with Bob Fraser. And Bob Fraser did an awful lot for us and kept us on our toes, and it was a real spur. He was a real spur for the department.
Bob, take us back to the early years in the classroom in electronics.
Well, the first year was kind of interesting. It was in the church up on Church Avenue. And the janitors would take all of the desks and everything out and convert it into a church basement for Sunday, and then they'd put them all back for Monday. And I'm walking around straight out of the military and discovering that the students aren't quite used to this kind of format. So I had to change that. And at the time, it was quite interesting that we had no labs, so we're doing double theory all through that until Christmas time, at which time we then tried to catch up with the labs. So it was quite interesting. It was a long process to develop those labs into the condition we wanted them in, but we got them in.
And when you did develop the labs, and when you moved into 315 Pembroke Street East, I understand there was a weekend where, let's just say, the electronics program and the radio station met head on.
Well, we had one of these physics experiments. It's an air track where you had little collisions on this frictionless air track, like one of those air puck hockey games. And you needed a spark to make an arc through paper tape, and that gave you the position of the thing. So we were a little short on money, and I was designing my own. And I was using an ignition coil and electronics to drive it, and I was having trouble. It was intermittent and everything, and I'm working at it on Friday and Saturday, and I couldn't get it to work properly. It was constantly intermittent. Turns out on Monday the guys are talking about the radio station, which was above us in what later became the cafeteria for the faculty, and I guess radio interference with this antenna that was on the air track. It was going out. The students mentioned this strange tickety tick tack tick tick that was all night.
Hi, I'm Bill Collins, and I was one of the first instructors in the forestry program. Actually, myself and a colleague of mine, Larry Scales, started the program, and we had a mad scramble from July the 1st when we were hired on to the September when we had to have some people in our class. So the first year we were maybe 2 or 3 days or ahead of the class. That was about it. Everything
that I did in Guatemala, I feel initially started in Algonquin College. The feeling that I developed for children, the way that classes were taught, the relationship that was built in the college atmosphere, and I took everything I learned from Algonquin, and I took it into Guatemala and set up early childhood programs to really change the lives of children in Guatemala.
Hi, I'm Marianne Mask, and I worked for the college for over 35 years.
And Marianne, I remember you worked upstairs as an admin support to the nursing program. So tell me about those years.
Yes, Dawn, actually I did. I started at Lorraine Center. The college was actually running the nursing program that time, and I was there for a year, and we did the big move over to the main campus. And then I was working as admin support with nursing until 1981. And that's when I moved downstairs. I still always thought that I worked upstairs much longer than I worked down, but of course I didn't.
And when you came downstairs, it was to work for a wonderful man that we both worked for by the name of Frank Havey. Tell me what it was like to work so closely with Frank all those years.
It was wonderful to work with Frank. Yes, I was hired as executive assistant to him. He hadn't had that position before. Was responsible for all of the programming, including the operations of the campus. And so he was a great mentor. One of my favorite areas of work, you may know this, was the budget. I loved it. It was like a puzzle. And so he was very good to guide me through that in the first years, because we would have to go to present in Ottawa. And before we did that, we always spoke to all of our managers in Pembroke and, of course, grilled them as much as we would possibly be grilled.
I remember those interviews.
I love them. Everybody did so well. And it was great to be part of a team and see what that was like to work as a team. Certainly there were changes that happened, programs that were added, programs that had to end because of, for whatever reasons. And I went through that with Frank and saw what that was like. One of the memories I have with him is we were preparing the budget. It was January, and I don't remember the exact year, but it was the Challenger disaster. And he came back. I always went home to have lunch, which was great. He was able to walk to Maple Avenue and come back. And we started our budget review, just the two of him, and he came back, and he was so upset and said what had happened. He'd seen it on the news. So it also showed the caring and compassion that he had for the whole community, really, and what was going on.
But tell us the story of how your whole family arrived here and enabled Frank to take on that very important role for the community college.
It was probably chance in a way, because we started out coming back into the country with the Army. We were in Washington and the outskirts, and out in one of the suburbs of Washington, yeah. And he was working downtown as Canadian liaison officer. So when we were coming back to Canada, of course, it had to be the Ottawa Valley, and automatically he was coming back to Ottawa, still in the Army. And so we came back and we decided, well, we worked there for a while, and my oldest son was just going into high school, and I had a little one 4 years old who was just going into primary school. And we were fairly happy in Ottawa because we had lived there before. It was our second posting to Ottawa. But then we decided that we wanted to move to the Valley. And it had always been Frank's dream to move to Arn Prior, of course, and mine to come to Pembroke. And so we started watching and waiting to see what would happen. And this specific job came up. And he always wanted to be a teacher as well. And he did a lot of teaching of the recruits, etc., in the Army. And he thought that was probably his forte.
Doug, Algonquin College spent many years, many decades at 315 Pembroke Street East. But originally, the founding fathers did not want to locate the college there.
Well, yes, Lorne Foran, who was a lawyer in town, subsequently became a judge, was on the board of directors at that time. And they were looking for a location somewhere in Renfrew County for Algonquin College. And I guess they met down in Ottawa, and somebody had mentioned that they were really interested in this farmhouse just on this side of Pembroke side of the bridge at Snake River. And it was an octagon house, and that's what really attracted them. It was 8 sides to the house. And they were going to have that as the start of the campus, a 100-acre farm, and they're going to locate there.
Now, Waterloo had just located their university. Was that part of their reasoning?
It seemed to be a trend that in those days. it was back in the days when things were really expanding in the education field, and they were looking for places outside cities, outside towns, in farmhouses, to start a spot to grow from there. And if I was down visiting the campus of the University of Waterloo, where I graduated from, and the old farmhouse is still there, but surrounded by these big, tall buildings. So it was sort of a tradition back in those days, yes.
And so the location now, is there anything significant still there?
Well, I remember growing up in Pembroke years ago, you used to be able to go upstairs in the location where you were there now, the 315, and I used to get an ice cream cone up there. It was a dairy, and and the radio station was also located there at one time. And then back a few years ago, they expanded, they put an addition on, and that became the college.
Sandy, you have held positions as at the college as the chair and then vice president at the Pembroke Regional Hospital. You've seen education at a post-secondary level from both sides as an educator and an employer. Tell us your thoughts on this 50th anniversary celebration for Algonquin.
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate Algonquin College for the 50 years of service to this community. And when I say service, I mean service, because from both sides, as an employer and as I worked at Algonquin, we worked very closely with the employers in the area to assure that we had graduates who were relevant, had current information, knowledge, skills, and were work ready. As well, we had the opportunity to build programs and courses for people at their request. So employers would often come to us and say, can you do this for us? Could you do a certification program to upgrade our RPNs? And that we would do. So I will say Algonquin was always there for us as an employer. And I believe when I worked at Algonquin, we were there for the agencies that we serviced.
I'm Pierrette Troutman, and I worked for Algonquin College for 20 years. I started in financial aid and secretary to Ken Aronson, which was a counselor at the time, and I went from there into the library, which I worked with Gina Pashansky in there, and it was lovely. And I had a family, three kids that went to Algonquin College, and they all did well with their training that they got at Algonquin.
And now I hear the next generation has come to Algonquin College Pembroke campus.
Yes, Nathan went to an forestry program, and he now works for Ontario Hydro and is very happy.
Hi, I'm Doris Siegel, and I spent 18 wonderful years teaching at Algonquin College. I was teaching in the office administration department, and when I began teaching at the college, I had already been at Champlain High School, and we were using, we were not using manual typewriters there, but we were using very basic electric typewriters, and then we took a big step into electronic typewriters, and then a wonderful thing came, word processors, and they were enormous. They occupied almost a whole desk, but they did wonderful things, and we thought they were amazing. And so after about 17 years of teaching, it was time to move into the computer world, and we did that. I also taught shorthand, which has certainly disappeared, but occasionally I meet one of my students and they say, you taught me shorthand at Algonquin College, and I can still do it. So it's these things are all history, but it was a wonderful place to work, a wonderful place to teach, and it was really a wonderful finish to my teaching career. I enjoyed everyone I worked with, and I can't say enough about teaching there. And you know what warms my heart is when I'm out someplace and somebody will come up to me and say, Mrs. Siegel, you taught me shorthand. You taught me, yeah. And it's just such a great feeling to know that I could help them find a career that they really, really enjoyed and did a good job at. So,
Vivian, in 40 years, you've taught multi-generations of the same family. Tell me about it.
I certainly have. There's one family, and I actually met a young girl one day, and she said, you know, you taught my mother, you taught my grandmother, and you also taught me. So 3 generations that I taught. Different programs, but taught them all, so it was great.
What brings to mind when you talk about different generations and decades of teaching is how technology changed in those 40 years.
For sure. When I started teaching, when you started on a manual typewriter, and when you were good enough, you got to go to an electric. And then we got this self-correcting electric typewriter, which everybody was thrilled. It had that little ribbon where people could correct and white out stuff. Then we went to a typewriter that had a one-line screen that you could self-correct. Then the AES word processors. Then on to the IBM computers, and now where we are. So it's just amazing what we've seen over the years.
Joyce, in your 20-year tenure of a professor at Algonquin College in the English department, you've had some interesting classes sit in front of you.
I certainly did. I started off in the academic upgrading program, which was a program designed to help students get their grade 10, 12 equivalency. And in 1 year, I taught a couple of convicts in my class from Landry Crossing medium security prison in the area. That was definitely an experience.
Hi, I'm Lee Torvey, and I started teaching at Algonquin in 1979. And in fact, Peter Cowan had my resume in his desk when Ontario Hydro contacted him to see if he could provide a 1-month intensive ESL program for Korean technicians. So he phoned me, called me in. I was sitting in his office after he had hired me when he phoned the English department in Ottawa to tell them that he had hired me. And I got to hear the response of the English department that had heard this for the first time. And I assured Peter he had made a wonderful decision.
And he did. We know that for a fact. And this was the beginning then of more ESL training for Algonquin College.
Right. That was the time of the boat people. And in 1980 and 1981, our college ran for 18 months full-time ESL programs for boat people. I think there were 40 or 50 Vietnamese refugees, Chinese primarily, in 3 classes at Algonquin College.
You started when Phyllis Durnford was the chair of health sciences.
Yes, in the early 80s.
And some of the changes you've seen, Sophie, in the years that you taught, the decades you taught.
When I first started, I taught in clinical, and it was in the Pembroke Civic Hospital, which isn't here anymore. And then from there, I moved on to the Pembroke General Hospital. And then I ended up teaching for 20 years in Renfrew at the Victoria Hospital.
Tell me about the early years. You did a variety of teaching in a variety of programs.
Right. Well, when I first worked with Algonquin, it was my wife had been teaching there in the upgrading, and so when she found work elsewhere, I went in and finished off that part of it, and I taught a little bit there. But then that contract ended, and I got a call to help working at Golden Lake, and I drove with Lisa Clark. She picked me up at a certain location, whatever, and we drove down to Golden Lake together, and we did about a 6-week course there. And then for a short while I worked elsewhere. I worked at Fellows, and then I came back in 75, and I taught English mainly. First of all, I think it was office admin or secretarial at that time, and right through until 2014. Yeah. And because I was in English, I taught in various programs. I also had a course called Science, Technology, and Society, which I really liked.
Hi, I'm Vince Jerva. Came to the Forestry Woodsworker program and Forestry Tech program in 1972 to teach fire control in particular. And great experience, and enjoyed it. Came from northern Quebec at the time, and had many good years of teaching there. In fact, in all my work career, I have to say that the experience, the 10 years I spent at Algonquin College, were the best in my work experience. A great combination of outdoor work, field work, and academic work. I came also from a teaching background, so the academic work was interesting as well. So it was a great balance, and had the opportunity to work with some great people in the Forest Woods Worker program, like Ted Dupuy and Leo Balek and Bert McKinney and Grant Hopper, and then in the tech program, Bill Collins and Larry Scales, Tom Stevenson and Doc, Doc Clark, yes, and really great experience there. They all supported us very well, and it was a good experience. And of course, we learned as well. I ended up not only teaching fire control, but after a few years helping with the logging aspects and the civicultural aspects of the programs as well. And I learned as much as the students too, so it was a great experience there.
50 years, Marguerite. It's a long time in education, but you have a certain milestone that you'd like to share with us this evening.
50 years for Algonquin College. I had the joy of spending about 11 years at the Pembroke campus, and it was amazing. The people at that campus are really what make it the best that it can be. The milestone, though, is when we were successful in launching the Bachelor of Science in Nursing program. We had worked so long and so hard with our community partners, General Hospital, Civic Hospital before that, Pembroke Regional Hospital was what it ended up being, and our partner, the University of Ottawa, to bring the Bachelor of Science in Nursing program to Pembroke.
What did it mean for the community, Marguerite?
What it meant, Dawn, was that we would have nurses that were educated in our hospitals, working in our hospitals when they graduated. It meant we would have a healthy pool of graduates for our hospitals to hire from. It meant quality health care, quality nursing care in our local hospitals.
And you were telling me just before we went on camera that orientation had different meanings in different years. And one year they had you cooking.
That's right. Someone in the faculty came up with a really great idea that to welcome the students, we would make chili.
And that's a lot of students.
Oh, it was a lot of students, and not everyone actually made the chili, and we didn't all use the same recipe either. We were actually students in our own learning at that point in time, but we decided that as part of orientation, we would all make chili and serve it for lunch to welcome the students and hopefully make them feel that it was home-like and that it would, improve our retention.
What does it mean to you as mayor to have a community college like Algonquin College in your community?
Oh, it's very important to have it because if we go right back to as far as our importance or our priority for the city is economic development. And the importance of Algonquin College, it's hard to specify exactly, but it is so important that we bring back youth to the community, have them trained here, and I think we tend to forget the economic aspect of it with the student residences that we have in the town, and also that you have at least 500 students, my assumption would be from outside of the community who would come in.
Jamie Bramberger said in a previous interview, 50% of the student body comes from out of our area, out of Pembroke area. So that, you're right, significant contribution.
And it's fabulous. So we're looking at more and more, and we can look at just our own community in the downtown, the young entrepreneurs and old entrepreneurs who are opening businesses. And it's because of a college or having a college in our community. So there's so many things that we can offer going forward. And with economic development, we've put tools in place to help bring industry in. So the college is also a priority. Every time we're out speaking to people coming in saying, look, we do have an excellent education facility here in the town to serve the community. And what I hope is that, the students from outside who come in, get their education, get to love the community or the heart of the Ottawa Valley, and they return.
And joining me now is Fred Blackstein. Fred is the former Board of Governors rep and was on the Board of Governors and passed the motion that had a huge impact in the future of the Pembroke campus of Algonquin College. Fred, let's reminisce.
Well, it was a big challenge for the team, and as the expression goes, there's no I in team, it's TEAM. And trying to convince a board of governors of 20 people, all from the Ottawa area, mostly senior bureaucrats, that we little folks up here in the Ottawa Valley in Pembroke should be given every single dollar from the $25 million reserve fund that the college had, not part of it, not 3/4 of it, but all of it, in order to build a campus here in the Ottawa Valley on the beautiful river. Fast forward, the team made it happen. I had the privilege of passing the resolution, and the rest, as they say, is history. So that would be one reminiscence of consequence that I think about. But then we move from that serious to something a little on the humor side. As everyone knows, we had to raise $2.5 million to represent our community share of the new $36 million building. And one day, one of our major philanthropists, Alan Huckabone, and I were driving along the waterfront, and Alan turned to me and said, I think this is a good thing, a good project. I'm going to give you $500. To which I thought, well, $500, I might have expected a little more from him. And I didn't say anything, and a little bit later he turned to me again and said, so what will you do with $500,000? And I thought, foolish Fred, he meant 500,000. So anyone visiting our new campus will find the Kathleen and F. Allen Huckabone Library as a lasting tribute to the community's generosity.
Jay, 20 years and a variety of programs. Take us back. What was it like in the classroom 20 years ago?
Well, I still remember those early days in the classroom. In those days, a part-time professor didn't have an office, didn't have a place to hang your coat, certainly not a telephone or a computer. So those were the beginnings of that career. I loved it from the beginning, and as I hung around and did more courses, I was always very, very satisfied with the interaction with the students. Such a wonderful facility we have now, but in those days, we made the best of what we had.
And now you are Board of Governors rep. And what is the importance of the Board of Governors representative from this area, Jay?
Well, the Board of Governors sets policy, of course, and enables management to do their job, helps steer the ship. We've just completed a major task with the strategic plan, a 5-year strategic plan that took effect at the beginning of this year. And that kind of plots the future of Algonquin as we compete for students, as we face diminishing financial support from government. So there's lots of challenges, but it is an absolutely wonderful experience. And we are so fortunate to have a wonderful team on our Board of Governors. I'm overwhelmed with the quality and the skill of the people that are there.
We act as an agent for change for our communities. In many ways, our graduates hit the ground floor running, and our employers depend on this. We teach a very applied type of education, which is in demand by our employers. We will continue to see this. This is not going away. And we continue to transform ourselves in response to their needs through our liaison with employers, with organizations. We modify our programming to respond to their needs. So we'll continue to adapt and meet our community needs.
What are some of the changes that you've seen in your time at Algonquin College?
I think the biggest change is the growth in the student population. Of course, the beautiful waterfront campus that came in 2012. But that was really driven by that enrollment growth, and much of it has come from out-of-town students. The Outdoor Adventure program was launched in 2000. It really showed us that if we built the right programming mix, we could attract students to Pembroke and to our campus. And from that, there were other unique programs. And as a result of that, here in 2017, more than 50% of our student population comes from outside of Renfrew County.
What does this state-of-the-art complex mean for the future of Algonquin College?
You know, when we were in the early stages and trying to get the approvals and funding, it really wasn't about the here and now. It was about the future. We could see that this community and this valley had a respect for post-secondary education, had a need for post-secondary education, and it wasn't going away. In fact, that momentum was growing.
So we needed to find a way to bring a new, as it turned out, waterfront campus to Pembroke and to provide programming for 5 years ago and into, as we hope, the next 50. It's all about change, and it's making sure in that change we're meeting the needs of the local community, but now in our new world, we are looking at meeting the needs of the world. So whether we're creating training and education for jobs locally, we're also doing that for jobs that may not exist in the valley right now, but they exist in our country, in our province, and in the world, and our students will be prepared.